Okay. Okay, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Convos. I'm your host, Lanie Hobbs. I am the host of the True Crime Fan Club podcast, the It's Haunted What Now podcast, the Crimes of Passion podcast, a Spotify original from Parcast, and yes, the host of the True Crime Convos on Spotify Live. Let's see. Hopefully we have some people joining us. Hi, Woody. Hopefully you are here. Let's get going. Alright, so here we go. Hi, friends. Welcome to True Crime Convos. We're getting started here. We always start our chat, our live streams, Spotify Live in general, with in that case is the untimely murder of Betty Gore that was perpetrated by Candy Montogomery. So if you don't know, we are all on different platforms. We're live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Spotify Live, and on Fireside. We have a whole thing set up here. So we are gearing up for the True Crime Podcast Festival that's coming up this week. So make sure in the chat you drop the ASL. I am Lanie, 34-year-old cis female, she, her pronouns, and I am in Dallas, Texas. Thanks everybody for joining here. All right, so we are going to get started in talking about the case that kind of piqued my interest a while back in 2018. I thought I was the only person who knew about this case. It was passed around in my family as a case that you talked about. My mom, my grandmother are all into true crime, so we talk about it pretty much all the time. So, okay, good. Sorry, I got an email from my buddy Ethan. So, we were talking about this case pretty much all the time, especially like in 2018 or whatever. And then, of course, Hulu came out with a made-for-TV movie. And I think HBO Max is doing one now, but it's the case of Candy Montgomery, hey Fab, and Betty Gore. So the case itself is known as the Wiley Axe murder. It's a little crass, obviously, but it's because of the way the crime was perpetrated. So just to give you a little bit of background on Wiley, Texas at the time. So when Betty was murdered in 1980, Wiley was still very much a small town community. It was on the outskirts of Dallas, so you're talking maybe 35 minutes from downtown Dallas or the city itself. Hi, Melissa. And hello, Esperanza. So, yeah, it's really, really like a farm town, right? Like there was nothing but fields everywhere. It's a lot more suburban now. Tons of homes are popping up. It's becoming very small city-ish now, as opposed to being a country living situation. There's still some parts of Wiley that are, but for the majority of the town, the rest of it is very suburban, if you will. So in 1980, that's kind of what we were working with. Sorry if you hear my dog who's being a turd. That's what we're working with for the background into this. Now, I'm actually from Wiley. And when I say I'm from Wiley, I was actually just born there, right? I don't claim it as my town. That's not my real hometown. But that's where it all started. So I think that's why my family, especially my mom and my grandma, were so interested in that case, because it was so close to home. And again, this was in 1980, so it was kind of at the peak of when we were seeing like these serial killer crimes happening. We were seeing detective magazines coming out more, things like that. So that's where we are. the way that Candy and Betty got together or came to know each other was through church. And there are a lot of people who are familiar with the area and who have actually gone to that church. I know several people who have gone to the church. And so they'll be like, yeah, I went to that church, or I grew up right around there, or I grew up down the street from there. So that's how Betty and Candy end up meeting. So they are going to church together and raising their children alongside each other. And Candy is this little, like, firecracker, if you will. She's the quintessential mom who feels stifled, right? She's just like, listen, I have so much more good with her marriage. She loves her children. She loves her church. She loves her community. And she loves doing things that bring her joy like that. So, over the course of a few years, Betty and Candy meet. So, this was starting, in 1977. And they ended up moving with each other. Candy's really excited because she gets to have her children kind of grow up in a very small, quaint community close to the church, and she doesn't have to worry kind of like about the big city dangers that are out there in like Dallas or any other big city. It's kind of funny when you think about that. But anyways, so the other thing to note too about this community is that it's located in Collin County. And Collin County is notoriously conservative. Okay, so, and surprise, surprise, because it's Texas, right? But notoriously conservative. So I want everybody to keep that in mind as we are learning more about this case and then as the case goes to trial, because it was so surprising to me when I kind of relearned the case, not recently, but doing what we do. So what prompted me to decide to do this live, to be honest, I did not have a subject in mind. Next week, we're going to be talking with a caster who's going to join us, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But it's because I did see the HBO Max trailer for the Elizabeth Olsen movie or mini of a true crime story that has, sex and affairs and people cheating on their husbands and wives, etc. And really, nobody in this, probably besides Candy, wins, right? So, as their families get to know each other, Candy starts to notice Betty's husband, Alan Gore. Now, this is 1978, and they're at a church volleyball game. And she's noticing, she's the person who recounted all of this, so this is straight from her mouth. So she's noticing Alan's kind of physique, his athleticism, and if you look at Alan, like, he is okay. Okay. You know how they're doing that trend on TikTok where, like, he's a 5, but, so Alan's probably like a 4, and Candy's like, oh, but he's a 10. She saw him do that. She was like, he smelled sexy. And then she was basically like asking her friends, minus Betty, obviously, about having an affair, starting an affair. And be like, you know what? My life is boring. My marriage to Pat, who is her husband, is, not doing so well and needs some resuscitation. Spark of love, and not really love, actually. What's it called? Passion. Like, she wants this spark of passion. And she just wanted something to, like, shake up to have, that spark in a relationship. So she was like, let me see. Is he the type of guy who can, like, rattle my cage, who can make me so, like, hot under the collar? So she starts kind of enticing him, like, existed. Um, but they did have a lot of similarities in that they still, which is hilarious to me that she points this out, but she was like, oh, but he was really active in the church. He loves his kids. He's funny. And so she was just like, I think I'll try. So she starts kind of inserting herself into these situations where she gets some alone time with Alan. And he starts kind of taking on or accepting the initiation of that flirting from Candy and is like, oh, this is nice. Like, this attractive woman. To him, again, because this was the 80s, so imagine, like, perm and those giant, like, square glasses that people thought were the rage. Um, that's what he was looking at when it came to Candy Montgomery. So they started flirting. He would wink at her. She would be like, oh, hey, we're going to go to the choir practice and flirt, flirt, flirt. Um, and then she was kind of confused sometimes because she'd be like, oh, hey, I feel like Alan's trying to get my attention. And exactly, Esperanza Aquanet. She's like, oh, I feel like this is very much like a middle school situation where she's like, does he like me? I don't know. Let me check. And she'll, like, give him these, like, side glances and be like, are you looking at me? And he'll, like, just randomly glance over at her. And she's just like, oh, he's totally into it. He loves it. Great. It was very, very interesting how she convinced herself that, um, Alan was ready for it. And the thing that's kind of crazy about this is, like, some of us are putting in here, like our ASL, right? So 34 for me, and this feeling, which I think we can understand if you've been in a long term relationship, that things are getting, boring and you want to spice things up. Now, for her, that included having an affair. But can you imagine being that young with that many kids and already experiencing and he's just like, yeah, I've been, it's like that takes some time. So, anyways, um, they're at this choir practice one night, and Candy decides to put on Anime Nerd. We're really not here for this today, my friend. I'm so sorry. I don't play games. I think they were in Two Girls, One Ghost too, with that last time. So annoying. So, yeah, you're not in my room anymore. Get out of here. If you have no idea what's going on, it's happening on Spotify Live. He's going to be fine, I promise. I think, Daniel, if you were in the campfire stories last week, I think they were doing the same thing, where they were like, oh, I think there's a ghost in my house, or there might be somebody here. I feel like I'm being watched. They were saying it over and over again. Anyway, so they're at the choir practice, and I'm telling into this trap too, where we put all of these like emotional things on men, and they don't really sometimes get it, right? They're like, I never thought like that. Like my husband would say that all the time. He'd be like, oh, you're probably thinking like this and this, and he's like, definitely did not go that route with my thinking process. So Alan's probably like, okay, sure, like what do you want to talk about? And she's probably like, oh, he's opened the door for this. And she goes, listen, I have been thinking about you quite a lot, and I think that we should do something about that. Rather, we should definitely do something about that. And listen, I'm just really attracted to you. And Alan's still sitting there confused. Tell you that. And instead of allowing him an opportunity to respond to that, she's like, okay, bye. She just leaves. Um, Literally, just leaves the room. Like, jumps out of the car, sees you later. It's the most awkward thing to do, but it also speaks to kind of her immaturity, right? Like, this is a person who's just like living in this la la land of this is what this fantasy looks like to me, and I want to make sure it all aligns perfectly. And so this is the first step. So she thinks she's being bold and forward by doing this, and Alan's just like left scratching his head. And he admittedly was like, it was nice to hear that somebody liked me, and found me attractive. And I'm like, I feel you, Alan, right? It's nice when somebody's like, oh, hey, by the way, maybe it's not so nice. I don't know. So, okay, so like I'm married, right? And if somebody I was like hanging out with or general vicinity friends with, because you know you have kind of those like outside friends that aren't really in your friend group, but you see them. If one of them were like, hey, so I like you, and I just wanted you to know that I'm attracted to you, and if you wanted to do anything about that, I would no longer be that person's friend because that's weird. Um, I I'm sure I would be flattered, but I would be like, this is an uncomfortable situation to be in, and maybe that's just me. I would love to hear what you guys think about that. Like, what would your reaction um, be to something like that? If you were in a committed relationship, or if you're just like, no harm, no foul, because it takes two to tango, right? So as long as I don't express interest, but I would always feel like there's this weird, like, I know something, you know something, and I tell like my husband everything. So it would also be three people who feel the situation, or two people, maybe my husband and myself, who feel the situation's weird. And like Brett's not the type of person who will ever in his life go and confront somebody like, did you say you were attracted to my wife? He won't do that. It's just very strange. So I'd love to hear what you guys think from that perspective. Um, so, anyways, he's shocked, but he was shocked at the conversation and being like, "Oh, you're attracted to me," but he wasn't surprised that Candy approached them this way. He was like, "Listen, this is a girl, a woman that speaks her mind. She's always done this. She's known as being forward and direct, blunt to the point, and." That part didn't surprise him. It was more so the I'm attracted to you, and you know, I want to do you basically. But he was also like inside of himself very happy about that. It made him feel good. He was like, yes. Okay, so let me go to the chat real quick because I'm missing so many good things. You guys are doing great. Also, if you're joining us on Fireside, hello. We're trying things out there too. We're also live on Twitch, on Twitter, and on YouTube. Anime nerd. So annoying. Um, Yeah, so Esperanza made a good point. I think some people confuse contentment and consistency as bad. I've been a dedicated mom for 25 years. I love it, but it's not for everyone. Um, Candy needs to get into scrapbooking. Yes, okay. Yes. Okay. So everybody, great points in the chat. Thank you so much for bringing those up. So yeah, he's just like, oh, it's so nice that like it's Candy. Um, he said that she wasn't. Okay, here we are. She wasn't a classic beauty, but she was the best looking woman at the church. Like she was the most attractive woman at the church. Um, and she was fun to be around. Like he thought she was just a blast in a glass. I don't know. And then he kind of was like, wait a minute. Is she just like flirting with me, or is she serious? Like, does she really want something with me? And he went into this like thought spiral of wondering, like, does she want to have extramarital affair with me? Maybe she'll say something next. So he was kind of like excited about this. And yeah, for me, no, I'd be not excited. Yes. So yeah, I would approach somebody who was like happily married and be like, dude, I think you're hot. And if I wasn't married, I would totally get with that. What? I would never do that. Um, but yeah, I don't think there's any problem with somebody going like, you're attractive or you look really nice, but there's a difference, I think, between expressing interest and just being like complimentary. Um, so Alan was like, she's expressing interest. Now I'm thinking about her, and hopefully she'll say something again. He was definitely not the type of person who was forward in his communication. He was the type of person that let things happen to him, right? So if Candy wanted to have the affair, she was the one who was going to have to say something about that and be like, oh, hey. Um, so he did feel guilty because he found Candy to be attractive in a way that he didn't see his wife. So if you look at pictures of Betty, he considered her to be more plain. And Betty was, not the person who was doing her makeup every day. She was raising small children and she was taking care of the home. And that just wasn't her style. Like, she was not the person sitting down in front of her mirror every day putting her makeup on. For some people, that's perfectly fine, great and wonderful. But she was just kind of innocent. I mean, like, you look at her face and she just looks like such a nice person. She was popular in her small hometown. She grew up in Kansas. And she fell in love with her math teacher when she was in school. Like, when she was in college, she was like, I love this man. And you would think, oh, this man had to have been Alan. Nay, it was not Alan. It was a random professor. So she got married to Alan, and they were honestly, like, her family was surprised. They were like, you're marrying that guy? Okay, you could do so much better because you're super beautiful. And for Betty, that part wasn't important. She really loved him. He was shy, and she just felt like they were a great match. Like, she saw something in him that others didn't. He seemed, for some people that met him, especially people in her family that met him, he came across as kind of snobby and stuck up, or didn't really care to be around people. And I think we've all met and known people like that, where they just kind of are quiet to the point where you're like, okay, now you're being rude. And they're just like extremely introverted. He was going bald pretty young in his life, but they ended up moving to Wiley in the 70s. And Alan's actually a very smart man. Like, he was working for Rockwell International at the time, and then I think ended up working at Texas Instruments eventually. So Betty was teaching in a elementary school, and she was like, listen, I don't really like being a teacher here. I don't like having to deal with these children. And she hated being left alone at home because Alan was traveling quite frequently. So she was still trying to find her own way in life eventually. Now, their sex life was struggling at the time. Alan did mention that. Um, she wanted to have another baby, but unfortunately, she was having a really difficult time getting pregnant. She was experiencing some fertility issues. So, the only time that they were having sex with each other was when Betty was monitoring like her fertility windows. And the sex became more about a process versus I want to have sex with my partner because I'm attracted to them and because I love them, like whatever passions flare up when people want to have sex, right? But Alan felt like it was becoming very like clinical, and he was just like, this kind of sucks. He was also getting tired of what he believed to be Betty's hypochondria. She would, complain about like headaches and different things, and he was just like, man, compared to Candy, my wife kind of sucks. Like he literally was just like, um, with Betty, things are boring and bleak. Not that Alan was over here having the best time of his life. Like he was working, and he was pretty boring himself. So it's kind of like very interesting that he's holding Betty to, actually not interesting considering who it is, but, um, considering he's just like, oh, it sucks that my wife's having these fertility issues, and that she's complaining about being sick, and yeah, she's so boring and not making life exciting for me, and he's also not doing anything for her. He just felt like he was being used by her. He felt like, listen, I am just your mating companion, and you are basically like just living off my dime. Meanwhile, I have this firecracker, Candy, over here, who looks like and is a ton of fun when I'm around her. And, she seems like there's something there. To be fair to Alan, because sometimes I can be not fair to Alan, he just was like, listen, I love Betty, and I wouldn't do anything to hurt her. Lies, but whatever. That's kind of what he told himself. He was just like overall enamored with the fact that, Candy jumped in his car and was like, you're hot, I love you, let's start an affair together. So, whatever to Alan. I try to be fair to him, but it still pisses me off because it's just so stupid. So, choir practice happens again, like 2 weeks later. And, of course, they're Googling, eyeing each other, keeping the secret between them, right? Who's getting, like, Days of Our Lives vibes from this? Or, like, Lifetime Movie Network, because it's really ridiculous at this point. So, another church volleyball game happens, and Alan's over there being athletic, looking great, according to what's her name? Candy. And they were like, oh gosh, we should probably stay back and help clean the gym and clean it up and make sure everything's put away, shouldn't we? And Alan's like, oh yeah, for sure, we should totally do that. So they end up doing that. They clean up the gym and they walk out to the parking lot together, and Alan looks at her, stops in front of the car, and is like, so, Candy, what did you have in mind? And so she just gets in the car and she tells him, get in. So he's like, okay, getting in, no problem, ma'am. And then she just stares at him, which is what makes me think this Elizabeth Montgomery HBO Max movie that's coming out is based off of this, because of this next line that's in the trailer for this. And so she basically turns and looks at him and says, do you want to have an affair? Like, would you be interested in having an affair? And Alan was like, dude, I had pumped myself up for this conversation. I thought I was prepared for anything, but this chick just came out and said, do you want to have an affair? And he didn't know what to say. He was just like, I don't know. And Candy's just like, listen, I just wanted to tell you this because it's been on my mind. I just wanted to throw it out there to see if you would be interested, see if you wanted to do it. And really, I just wanted to get it off my chest. I just wanted to put it out into the ether. So it's no longer like in my brain. It's now just in the world. Right. And so he's just like, you know what? I don't think that that's a good idea. As much as he was like pumping himself up and was like living in this delusion that he was like some hot shot, he was like, I don't think I can do this. It wouldn't be fair to Betty. I love her. It's all the generalizations and rationalizations that people who are going to cheat on their spouses or significant others say to themselves to make themselves be like, at least I tried to say no. Initially, I didn't want to do it. And then, just something overpowered me and I had to. And he was just like, listen, it's unfair the way that I am kind of bashing Alan a little bit about his affair with Candy, because spoiler alert, they have an affair. Alan shares that Betty cheated on him, and he knew how that felt to be cheated on, to be the person who cheated on, or to be cheated on. And so he was just like, yeah, I don't want to do that because I know how bad that can hurt the other person. And you're like, good for you, Alan. Like, good for you for forgiving your wife. That's probably another topic for another day, because I totally love to know where everybody stands on things like that. I used to be, I don't know. I'd have to know. If your partner cheated on you, and imagine, this is like a committed relationship that you are in. I'd love to know where everybody stands on that. So, for them, it ended up being something that Alan could forgive, move on from, and, stay married to Betty. Didn't divorce her. So Candy's just like, all right, well, chill out, guy, because I'm not interested in, like, loving you. I just want to screw you. So I love my husband, too. I don't want to hurt her or hurt him. So, like, let's just keep it cool. And so he was like, also, like, their attempts to get pregnant were successful. Betty was pregnant. And he was just like, listen, I don't want to do that. And plus, I don't, like, feel the same way about you that I do about her. And she's like, all right, Alan, calm down. It's fine. You don't have to let me down easy. I just wanted to have sex with you. Like, you don't have to go through this whole situation and be like, let me down easy and whatever. So she's just, like, giving off the vibes like, dude, do you want to screw me or not? I don't care how you feel about your wife. I don't care how you feel in general about any of this. I just want to know, do you want to get down? And she's just like, no. No. Don't care about any of that. And Alan's like, but I love her. Whatever. So imagine he says all of this, right? Which is why I go back and forth with my bashing of Alan. Because he says all the right things and then he does the complete opposite. So then, after Candy says, like, dude, I just wanted to, like, sleep with you, chill out, he leans over and gives her a kiss. And then quickly dashes out of the car like, oh my gosh, calm down. So, Alan was in the camp that, listen, marriages are forever. He was just like, I love sex. I know Betty likes sex. But there's just, not a lot of enthusiasm in the bedroom. So I'd like to kind of spice things up. But Betty was, like, terrified of being alone. And that didn't include, like, without a partner. She hated being alone in general. She was stressed out from her job at the school. And, we know that teachers, don't get paid enough. And I can guarantee you in 1978, they were definitely not getting paid enough. Oh my gosh, I used to work for a school district. And when I tell you, when I looked at those teacher salaries, like, they were making like $2,000 a year or $12,000 a year, maybe, I don't even remember, or $5,000. I was like, how did you live? Could you imagine? And of course, things were cheaper, but still. Teachers never get paid enough. I will die on that hill. So anyways, Alan was like, she's spending all of her time grading papers. She's stressed out. There's just no time for me into this. And he was just like, maybe we should go through this resource that he found. And it was called, or I don't think it's still in existence. I can't remember. But it was called Marriage Encounter. And there were some friends from the church who had gone through this program. And they were like, oh my gosh, we went through Marriage Encounter and it just made our marriage and our relationship better. And he was just like, wow, like I've seen friends who were like so close to divorce go to that Marriage Encounter thing, and then they come back, they're so happy, they're so in love. And he's like, I want that. But he was just like, yeah. So when he would ask his friends, like, okay, so what did you guys do at Marriage Encounter? One of his friends was really like, oh, you need to go see for yourself. And so he was just like, okay, well, you seem to be happy. And you seem like this is something that you should do. So they wanted something positive to like revitalize their relationship. And Alan's like, hey, why don't we go give this a try? And Betty's like, why should we do that? We have so much to do already. Do you think that there's something wrong with our relationship that we would need to go and seek out this like marriage encounter? So he was like, it's that classic like husband reaction that you see on TV. It's like she's setting him up, right? To be like, I know what you want to say. You want to say we do have problems, and then I'm going to like rip your head off and tell you like, so you think we have problems, trying to turn it around on him. So he was just like, no, never mind. We don't have any problems. We're all good, and dropped it. So that's all it was. Oh no, he didn't work at Texas Instruments. It was Candy's husband. Apologies. So anyways, Candy and Pat also moved to Wiley around that time. So that's how they kind of got to know each other. He was like, all right, well, since Betty doesn't want to go through this marriage encounters thing, I already kissed Candy. I mean, I might as well start engaging with her in a relationship. So it was kind of very quickly how everything happened. So one day he's like, hey, I have to go get new tires for my car. Do you want to come? Do you want to maybe get some lunch? And then we can talk about, what you wanted to talk about before, being very secretive, like so stupid. And when I tell you they had these I'll get into it in a minute, but it's the most ridiculous thing. It's like the most anal retentive way to have an affair. So it had been weeks. Like they almost hadn't seen each other for like a whole month. And so she was going through her own thing where she was like, oh my gosh, did I look like just a complete idiot for saying that I wanted to have an affair with Alan Gore, for God's sakes? And now he's like rejecting me of all people and being so like mightier than thou or holier than thou or whatever. And also, is he going to think less of me because I was so forward in telling him that I wanted to have this affair with him? So she was going through her own like existential crisis. But when he kissed her, she was like, okay, now I'm getting like different vibes from you, but it wasn't like a passionate kiss. This was seriously like a church peck. You have to know what I'm talking about. I was like, very quick. That's what he did. So she was just like, okay, no big deal. They end up going on this date, and he gives her a birthday card. Oh my gosh. The affair was so ridiculous. Oh, just wait. It gets so... it's the worst thing ever. So he gives her this birthday card, and is like... the front of it says, for the last of the red hot lovers. And guess what's inside? As she opens this card, a packet of Red Hots. And Candy freaking loved it. She was just like, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is the passion and the excitement that I want. This cheesy ass gift card or whatever the heck it's called. So she was just like, this is so sweet. And they talk about everything under the sun, except like they don't get to know each other. They don't talk about like, hey, what can we do? You know, like, how are we going to get this started? They just go and talk about their spouses, and they talk about church, and they talk about their kids, and, you know, like Alan's job, blah, 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 blah. And so Alan's like, you know what? I've never done anything like this before. Candy's like, duh, neither have I, dude. And he was just like, yeah, I'd feel so terrible and so bad that that Betty would find out about this. Again, the concessions he's making, even though he's going to do it. And he was just like, but listen, when you were in the car, you said that you just wanted to have sex. So what if we approach this completely without emotion? What if we just have a physical relationship, but we don't have any type of like emotional affair? We don't get involved or anything like that. We are just there to screw each other. And Candy's like, that's what I've been trying to say all along. I think that's wonderful. That's exactly what I want to do. And she was just like, I want to have fun, and I just don't want to like worry about that. So he, of course, is like, before Excel was Excel, he was like, well, you know what? We should think of the parameters around our relationship. This is the most boring affair on the planet, as you all have pointed out already. So he's just like, well, you know, let's take some time to think about what hazards, like basically doing the pros and cons of all this and being like, let's see what could possibly go wrong with us having an affair. She was just like, you know, here's the thing, Alan. I'm all about doing that. Totally on board with like pros and conning it. But if you don't sleep with me like tomorrow, then you're never going to meet my expectations of what I believe you are and how I believe you perform between the sheets. Okay? You're never going to be able to do that unless we sleep together like tomorrow. So they literally met for an entire month, you guys. An entire month. To have these planning sessions where they would go line by line over each pro, over each con, and determine like, what would we do if this happened? So Alan would get phone calls or be like, hey, what should we do? What if somebody saw us? And they end up meeting in like Alan's office or like a parking lot in his office, and they drive to a restaurant. He's just like, listen, we can probably meet whenever I take lunch, because I can take lunch whenever I want to, and I can be as long as it can be as long as I want it to be. So we just got to make sure, like, again, no emotional involvement. So Candy was like all about it, even though they were like, no emotional involvement. She started to get excited about the affair and would call him every single day at work and was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so looking forward to this. I'm so looking like forward to having my affair. They didn't even sleep with each other yet, okay? So she ends up making him lunch one day because she was going to invite Alan to her house for lunch. So she's just like, listen, if nothing happens, then I'm going to make sure we go through with this affair. So he was like really indecisive about when this affair was going to start, but they would meet all day, every day about why and why not something would work out. So she knew that Alan was starting to lean towards not having the affair. So she was like, no, dude. You need to come over to my house. Let's talk about it. Let's get it done. Madeline made a good point. She said, I can't believe Alan asked his wife to work on their relationship literally one time and was like, well, I tried. Guess I have to have an affair. Exactly. So they finish eating her famous lasagna, and he's all like, I don't know if I still want to do this. And, you know, his whole thing was like getting caught. And she's like, listen, that shouldn't be an issue because we're going to be so careful. And he was concerned about, again, the emotional involvement. He's like, we really need to think about this. And she goes, Alan, dude, this is just for fun. I am not serious about any of this. Like, I don't know how else I need to say this, that I am not going to get emotionally involved. And Alan's like, well, I'm a little afraid I might get emotionally involved. And Candy's like, trust me, won't let that happen. So their whys of the whys of why they should have an affair included things like a sense of adventure, a need for companionship, and she didn't put sex on the list, but everybody knew what that was. So she was just like, listen, Alan, it's up to you. I know that I can do this, but if I don't take any unnecessary risk and I act like an adult, then I'm fine to have this affair. Still didn't come to a decision by the end of that lunch date. And so Alan's like, all right, well, I need a few days to think about it. I rule. And he goes, okay, he calls her and goes, I'm definitely interested now in having this affair. So the ground rules, I really have to read you the ground rules because it is really ridiculous. So Candy makes this list of rules that they can discuss then over the phone. So first one is, if either one of them wanted to end the affair for whatever reason, it would end, no questions asked, meaning the other person won't fight it. If either one became too emotionally involved, the affair would end. If they started taking risks that shouldn't be taken, the affair would end. All expenses, food, motel room, gasoline would be shared equally. They would meet only on weekdays while their spouses were at work. Candy would be in charge of fixing lunch on the days they met so that they could have more time together, and they figured they would need all of Alan's 2-hour lunch. Candy would be in charge of getting the motel room for the same reason, and they would meet on a Tuesday or Thursday once every 2 weeks. That was because Candy was free only on days when her little boy attended the Playday preschool at the Methodist church. She took him each Tuesday and Thursday from 9 to 2, but she figured that she would need 3 out of those 4 hours for all of the other errands that she had to do for the church and for school and just like her daily hectic letter. Yes, she actually like wrote this down. So we then go into the start of the affair, right? And they go to this seedy ass little motel that's off of Highway 75 in Richardson, which is near Alan's job. And it's called the Como Motel. And I would just say, go ahead and Google it because it looks exactly the same as it did in the 70s. So it's one of those, like, it looks like a retro motel, right? Like, it very much looks like stuck in that time frame. So that's where they met. So she would make the lunch, then they went to the hotel, or to the motel. Candy paid for some of it, and of course, they split the everything down the middle, which was very nice for both of them. And she was just like getting the room ready. She was amped, like, this is it, this is amazing. And she was wearing a peekaboo negligee, and she was just very I don't know if they kept a ledger. It would make sense. I think Candy actually did. I think she was like, yes, definitely need to get calculations on everything we spend. So she, she's looking at herself, and this is a 29-year-old woman. Like, she was in good shape, for having 2 kids. Like, she was not overweight in any way. Not that that's bad, body positivity in this group, but she fell into the same pitfalls that most people do whenever they have a child, is that, like, my body's not the same, and maybe I don't look attractive. But she found herself to be like, oh, I do look good, and I know I look good for Alan. So she Alan ends up driving to the motel, and he's like, oh God, I think I'm having second thoughts. I don't know that I want to do this. And then he opens the door to the motel and sees Candy, and she's there in her little negligee, and he's just like, you know what? Forget that. I'm no longer scared. I'm here, and I'm gonna do it. And so she's just like, I made lunch for you guys. And she goes, she made like chicken salad, and she's like, I feel like what we're eating, which is, she feels like a chicken. But yeah. So it was the most unromantic everything that you could ever imagine in your life. So they ended up doing it, and she's like, well, they go through the situation, and Candy's like, listen, after we're done with this, you definitely need to take a bath because I don't want you to smell like me. And she was like, oh, he's not a bad lover because she didn't have to fake a lot of her responses to him, even though he himself was inexperienced in lovemaking because he had only really been with Betty. So he didn't really need to, do anything. He said he felt weak the rest of the time when he returned to work. So it took a lot out of him. So they continue this affair, for from like the end of 78 to 79. They met every week and they drank wine and they just had their affair. And when he looked back, he was like, you know what? I just was really relaxed. I didn't really care so much about the sex of everything or like everything that was happening like that. I was just like, oh man, this is just so relaxing. I didn't have to feel any responsibility towards my family, towards work. I could just like go there and relax. And he felt good. He realized that like his life he had the potential to have a different or better life in his opinion than he did staying married to Betty. And Candy felt the same way. She was like, listen, I feel so good about this decision. Everything is going great. And, minus the fact that Alan wasn't improving in her mind with the performance side of things. He was like, this is the best I'm going to get. So at least I'm having the affair, right? She then started to realize, like, oh crap, I think I am beginning to like him. Actually, I think I'm beginning to love him. And now it's becoming very, very risky. So she was just like, it's inevitable. I don't think you can approach any type of relationship like this where you don't have some type of emotional attachment. And so they both engaged in this relationship to fill a void within their own lives. And so she was just like, I think that I'm getting caught in this trap. I think I'm becoming too serious about you. And I think we should like end it. And Alan was afraid that they like wouldn't be able to be friends without having sex with each other. So he was just like, I don't think I'm capable of falling in love with you, but I really still like being with you. I feel good about myself. He didn't want the affair to like get out of hand, but he was very much like, I'm fine. I definitely don't feel anything for you like maybe you feel for me. And whatever. So he was like, you and your husband are going on this trip to Georgia to go see your family. So maybe things will cool down and whatever. And she came back and she wanted to be with him still. She wanted to continue the affair as expected. Alan was like, I missed you too. Things have been hard. Betty was 7 months pregnant and she needed a lot of attention because she had a lot of problems with her first pregnancy. And he was like, wow, if Betty started having labor pains when he happened to be having his affair, he would never forgive himself. So he was like, listen, I've had some time to think about it since you've been gone, and I think we should end the affair. And Candy was like, sure, cool. And he was like, that's amazing. I'm so glad she's so cool about it. And they both, I think, contemplated divorcing their partners, but at some point they were not like going to go that route ever. But let me see. So Candy was starting to come to the realization again that Alan's performance in the bedroom was not going to change. So she was just like, listen, yeah, I don't mind putting this affair on hold because you're just not that good. And she was also tired of like packing their lunch. Like, she was having to do this at home and then also to continue. Could you imagine being a housewife and a mom and, like, running around doing all the things for your family and then being like, whoops, better prepare lunch for my affair that's about to happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Should probably get that going. Are you kidding? No thanks. So she was just like, no thank you. This is so annoying. She just, like, this is becoming a hassle. And she noticed that, let me see. I want to try and get through as much as this is possible. Why did I think it was going to not take this long? Oh gosh. I think I'm going to have to do a part 2 of this, guys. But yeah, so, gosh, I'm trying to find a place that we could kind of skip to, because a lot of it, like, Betty and Alan do go to marriage encounter, and they have to, like, tell each other they love each other. And Alan ends up writing in a letter because, again, they had taken a pause from each other. So then Alan was like, I'm going to focus on my relationship with Betty now, as he should have. But he was just like, listen, before this weekend, the marriage encounter, I was starting to feel like I didn't know if I really wanted to live with you. But in just the short time we've had together, I realized that what I was feeling was not, I don't like you, but more like I don't feel excited about you because I'm too used to the way things are. I want to share a lot more of your feelings, and I want to be able to share mine with you. And Betty said, here I sit crying because I am so happy and so proud to be your wife. I've known that all along, but when you really stop to think about it, we are so lucky to have each other. Let's don't let anything come between us. We've been through so much. All of it we can look back at as good experiences, except the times you were gone for a long time. I remember those times with dread. The aloneness, the coldness of a house that really wasn't a home without you there, the fear of your safety because you were where I was not, and I couldn't make sure you were okay. I never really felt fear for my safety at home alone, but the feeling of being alone is the worst possible one to have. It's like you're in a dark tunnel and you've got a long ways to go to the light. The light isn't there till you're home again, safe and sound. And they end up going to a dinner afterwards, and they said that, listen, they came out of that whole situation as positive and being in love, and he, like, felt like he understood Betty a little bit more. And they end up ending the marriage encounter. They feel great. They go home to Wiley, and they end up picking up their daughter, who Candy was watching for the weekend. And Candy ends up handing him the baby because Betty was in the car, and she was like, oh, hey, how was it? And he goes, oh, it was really good for us. And she goes, okay, well, what does that mean? And he tried to only think about Betty the rest of the time, and he unfortunately fell into the trap again of wanting to call Candy and saying, like, hey, let's meet for lunch. And he would end up saying they would meet with each other again and say, like, hey, I don't think that this is a good idea. I was thinking a lot about Betty, and I think that she just was like, I think she was just lonely, and she was, scared to be alone, and she wasn't really being bitchy like I thought she was. And Candy's like, okay, great, wonderful. And he's like, but I also kind of don't feel different about you, but I do feel like I want to give my full self to my family, and the relationship that I'm having with you is taking me away from them. And so she's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And he goes, I don't think I can sleep with you anymore. And he still couldn't, like, commit to it because she kept asking him, like, okay. But they ended up ending the affair. So a little bit later, Candy and Pat end up going to marriage encounter themselves, but they didn't have the same type of experience that Betty and Alan had. So, gosh, I think I should probably end it. So we'll end it there, and then we'll go into the next time at the next one. So if you guys don't know, for those who've joined me, thank you obviously for joining me. But if you guys don't know, so Spotify Live has ended our contract, so we won't be doing True Crime Convos going forward. I mean, we have until I think the end of September, which is when our initial contract ends. But we'll also be doing True Crime Convos on our Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube. And we're trying it also on this app called Fireside just to see. But we are going to revamp things so we can do like giveaways, things we can really do on here just because of the platform. I don't know what's going to happen to the platform. I don't know if it's going to stick around or what it's going to do. But I know that we won't be official contributor, or I won't be an official contributor anymore. I think that's true for a lot of us that are on the app and that have started with the app when it came around. So I just wanted to let you know in case you didn't know. But also this weekend, we are having the True Crime Podcast Festival. We're going to have a lot of friends who are on Spotify Live. I think they're going to be uploading the schedule for us so that everybody who's interested can meet new podcasters, hear the live shows as they happen. It's just our way of being able to bring the festival to people who can't make it this year. Next year, we're going to be in Austin. So if you're definitely interested in attending, look out for announcements. You can click on my profile picture and follow me on my Twitter, or if you're following us on any of our other platforms, you'll already have the link to my Linktree. But I hope you guys have a great and wonderful night. Next week, I will have on another podcaster. I just forgot her name, but I'll make an announcement so you'll be able to, hang out with us here and everything. So we're not going away anytime soon. We'll be here at least until the end of September, and then we'll figure it out from there. But anyways, I hope you guys have a great and wonderful night. I appreciate you for joining me as always, and I will talk to you next week. Bye, friends.